Hello. I don't know how long this video is going to be, but my mom's lung cancer surgery is over. She's out of the hospital. She's back home. Um, and I was in the hospital during the day, during the surgery, and her sister was there. Her sister actually drove her to the hospital that day. And, I kind of went there to meet them. And my uncle came by later in the day, her brother. And, we kind of were waiting there a while. It's like we got there, we had to get there like 5:30 in the morning, and then I went to get some breakfast, and then I came back down, and but from the time they took her in to when they actually operated, they didn't actually start operating for another hour and a half, and the surgery itself was 2 hours, so we were waiting there probably, but from the time I finished breakfast, it was probably like 3 hours or something ridiculous. So my aunt and I just start talking about like everyday stuff, and then the conversation kind of then goes to my mother and her behavior. And my aunt, she is my mother's sister, so I wasn't expecting her to agree with me, or I wasn't expecting to convince her of my mother's true nature. But what it did kind of affirm for me was that I need to stay away from my extended family, because she comes across as like she's like very enlightened, I guess. I put that in quotes for a reason. She does yoga and she's into meditation, and I don't know if she was seeing a therapist or what, but she claims that because my mother now is seeking therapy, that it means, she's really trying and this and that, which I know it's bullshit, because a narcissist in therapy, they're not going because they want to improve. They're going because they want to find out, how do I change my behavior to get my target back? That's all they really care about. And I've seen, just from what I've been pulled back into with this whole cancer thing, I've seen this in my mother. How she hasn't changed at all. It's just she's slightly changing her tactics a little bit. And I was just telling my aunt a little bit about why I've been so distant and the things my mother did that led up to it. And, I did say my mother is a narcissist. I said, I always knew there was a problem, and then, so I started to say that I went online and started researching it, and I found this website. And then my aunt cut me off. An outsider might be like, oh no, it's good, she understands you, but no, I think what my aunt's uncles, they knew all along what she was, and I think they took pleasure themselves in seeing me get abused, because I think none of them really like me. But she's like, oh, what was it? Is your mother a narcissist? So I was a little floored, like, how does she know? And I figured maybe she was researching on her own because of the way she experienced my mother. And she was saying, too, how my grandmother was really... See, she didn't say it so straightforward, because what kind of made me... I wasn't expecting my aunt to be on my side. I wasn't. But what this whole conversation did was, it was just show me how they're really all in denial. Because she was saying, like, everything my mother does, my grandmother did, and she didn't say that my grandmother was a narcissist, but I think that's probably... She probably researched it herself because of what she went through with my grandmother. And I think my grandmother was really horrendous, and nobody really wants to admit that. They just laugh her behavior off as like a family thing, or because they're all similar now, they're like, oh, it's just what we do. And like, when they see someone getting legitimately abused, they kind of laugh at it, which I think is what happened to me and what they still do to me. And what was really... So, I didn't expect my aunt to be on my side, but I'm glad I spoke to her about it, though, because now I see more clearly who they all really are. So I'm talking to her, and then my uncle shows up. my mom's brother came into the room and sat across from us, and after we said hi to him, whatever. So I was telling her a little bit about stuff that my mother had done in the past, and she kind of didn't want to hear it anymore, or didn't want my uncle to hear it. She kept cutting me off and saying, Mike is over there. Mike is over there. Like, don't you dare talk about this in front of the king, you know, my mother's brother, like, oh, the king is here, you know? So it's like, in front of certain people, it can't be acknowledged that their family is any less than perfect. And a lot of their behaviors are really, truly very toxic, but they laugh it off as a joke, oh, that's just OCD. And, you know, maybe it is. I'm not saying everyone with OCD is a narcissist, but I do notice, like, a really strong correlation between cluster B and OCD traits. And they kind of, narcissists that bully constantly and constantly fault find and corner you every 5 minutes, they try to write it off as OCD. I don't know if anyone else has noticed that, or they try to write it off as OCD, or I'm just very, you know, but they're like, oh, it's genetic, it's how we all are. It's like, well, I'm not. I took more after my dad's family, I don't know, but sometimes I'm with them, like a group of them, I'm like, how are these people even my blood? And then my aunt started defending everything my mother was doing, which, it's so weird. I'm kind of scratching my head, because it's like, on one hand, she admits that my mother's a narcissist, because how did she know that that's what I was researching before I even said it? So she obviously knows, because I think she looked it up herself. I mean, she made it obvious. But then she starts defending all my mother's behavior and started kind of blaming it on my father. She's like, well, she felt like she had to control you so tightly because she couldn't control him. So it's almost like she's compensating for my father's addiction, which I can see how that would make sense. But why is she still doing it after he's out of the picture for 20 years? And I said that to her. I'm like, well, why, you know, he's been gone for 20 years, so why is she still acting that way? And she's like, because she thinks that if you leave her and you go out on your own, that you're gonna fail. Like, excuse me, bitch? You know, like, saying, she didn't say she thought it, it's what my mother thinks, but it's almost like she's agreeing with it, because she knows you're gonna fail. Like, it's like, they all have this image of me in their mind, or like, you know, and how the reason she was so OCD and controlling was because of my father and his addiction, which, it makes sense, but only for a certain time period. Like, again, it's the same mentality of like, oh, everything is his fault, whether he's in the picture or not. And I tell her certain things that my mother did, and she'd be like, oh, well, your grandmother used to do that too. That's just how we are. And like, this whole conversation just made me so angry. Like, it just makes it more obvious now that they all knew all along that I was getting abused, and they like the fact that I've been the scapegoat all along, and I've been absorbing all of their bullshit. And it's like, it's just infuriating. And she was telling me, and part of the reason I'm making a video on this too is because what I noticed in their behavior, and like laughing it off and saying like, it's not really narcissism, it's something else, and they can't control it. And any of you who follow Ollie Matthews of the Narcissistic Resistance, he did a recent video where somebody sent him an article on how narcissists are being unfairly targeted, because this bullshit article tried to put narcissism in the same category as bipolar and schizophrenia. Like, it's all defense mechanism, they can't control it, and the word is overused, and he was reading this, and he was getting really angry, and I understand why, because I don't think this is just my aunt. This is kind of what's happening in society, where now that we're calling it out, and this stuff is getting to the surface, I think people that have been pushing this bullshit for years are petrified now, because, you know, we've got them. So Ollie was getting very angry, and, you know, that it was triggering for me too, because my aunt was trying to say that my mother can't control any of it, that it's all genetic. It's all either genetic or an elaborate defense mechanism because of unfair things that happen to her. So I'm just supposed to continue to take it up the ass, basically. So what she's saying, like, it's really not that unique. There are articles out there from bullshit psychologists that push the same crap, that putting it in the same bin as bipolar and schizophrenia. So, and then my uncle too, he wasn't involved in the conversation, but once he showed up, my aunt was trying to overpower me and shut me up. She's like, no, Michael's here! Michael's here! Like, don't diss anyone in the family in front of Michael. Michael is the king, okay? And, maybe at a point my grandfather was it, but Michael's the oldest son. So he, don't diss anybody in front of Michael, So trying to shut me up that way, use my uncle to intimidate me, and I'm kind of sitting there, I'm like, I don't give a fuck if he overhears me or not. I didn't say that, but anyway, so that was my experience with my mother's brother and sister. And, again, I'm still low contact. I'm not trying to patch up my relationship with my mother or anything. It just sucks as an only child with no siblings and how she's alone. She's not married or anything. It's like, there's certain things I'm going to be burdened with no matter what, but I'm still kind of staying low contact, so I don't want any nasty comments. Why are you even speaking to them? And I've still been keeping my distance. I don't see the family a lot, and I think it's pretty obvious from this video that I see them for what they are as well. So, I guess any comments or what you think of my aunt's behavior, how all the defenses, but then basically admitting that she researched it on her own, how I think it's totally bizarre, but anyway, and if you follow Ollie Matthews, you might want to check out that video that he did. I forget the title of the video, but it was basically how therapists and the society is trying to tell everybody that narcissists have no control over their behavior and they're just as much victims as schizophrenics and people with bipolar. So that's, I guess, the end of my rant, and I'll see you on the next video.